It's a Wednesday episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Memphis plays the Hornets tonight, and that should be a pretty decisive win for Memphis. But before we preview that game, Damichael and I are going to talk midseason awards. Jaren Jackson Jr. in particular, is he an all-NBA player? And if so, what level? Plus, Damichael has a vote for these awards and the season ends. Is he throwing his mighty voter weight behind Jaylen Wells or Zach Edey for Rookie of the Year? We'll talk about that and more on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you so much for being with us on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. It is I, Joe Mullinax, one of your hosts. That means my co-host, Damichael Cole, is with me. Damichael did a great job flying solo post-Martin Luther King Jr. game. We had to make a call on who was going to go solo, and I figured that you would have rather have heard from the guy that was actually there for the Martin Luther King game. So Damichael agreed with me, thankfully. He took the solo show yesterday. I will take tomorrow's solo show, post-Grizzlies-Hornets, but you got both of us here together on this installment of Locked On Grizzlies. Today's episode is sponsored by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts as proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Literally anywhere you get a podcast, you can get Locked On Grizzlies. Make Damichael and I a part of your Memphis Grizzlies and NBA content consumption each and every time that an episode drops. And remember, we now have a free daily newsletter. Check out LockedOnDaily.com to get our Locked On Grizzlies free daily newsletter, words from me about the Memphis Grizzlies every single day, plus NBA content at large, plus fantasy basketball advice. It is wonderful. It is daily. It is in your inbox for free. Go to LockedOnDaily.com to sign up. Damichael, again, great job covering the Martin Luther King Jr. game. A very big deal in Memphis. Yep. It was great to see the Grizzlies come back and win. And it was great to see that effort once again be led by Jaren Jackson Jr., who is very clearly having a very good season, a career season, a timely career season, which I know you're going to talk a little bit more about here in a moment. But I saw a partner, and I want to shout out a mutual friend, I believe. You've talked to Sam before. I've had him on podcasts and stuff in the past. Sam Vecini, at Sam_Vecini, has a great game theory podcast that he does. And in his most recent episode, he talks about Jaren Jackson Jr. pretty extensively, has him second team All-NBA in their midseason awards. And he says, Sam does, at Sam_Vecini, again, Vecenie, he says, and I quote, think he's closer to being first team All-NBA than he is to being third team All-NBA. Now, just to give you an idea of some of the names that could potentially be in front of Jaren for that honor, because if you go into this process, Damichael, assuming SGA, Jokic, Tatum, Giannis, and Luka are your first team, which, right? Like, who's going to argue with
Luka's not eligible this year.
But Luka is no longer eligible. Okay, so Luka gets removed. So you take Luka out of that mix. Thank you for catching that, partner. The next tier could be people like Donovan Mitchell, Victor Wembanyama, Jalen Brunson, Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns if he gets back on the floor after his injury, right? And then the usual suspects, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Anthony Davis. I refuse to say LaMelo Ball. You know, those types of guys, right?
Just say Cade Cunningham. He's getting out the mud right now.
Cade Cunningham, we'll go him instead of Ball for sure. Jaren Jackson Jr., I didn't say his name yet. They have him second team and closer to first than he is to second. Is where would you have him? Right? Again, you're a voter for these end of year award kind of things. Mid-season report card, an A+ for Jaren. I don't know how it couldn't be. Where would you place him on your All-NBA team as of now? And how is that so significant to both him and the Grizzlies when it comes to contract extension talks?
Yeah, I like what they have him. You know, I think second team right now is kind of where he fits. I would say, you know, I mean, it's great that people outside of Memphis are acknowledging how good he is. You know, saying that he's closer to first team than third team. I don't think that's the case, but that's not to his doing. It's more, you know, him playing under 30 minutes, because we see the numbers when Jaren plays 30, 33, 34 minutes per game. That's first team All NBA type of numbers, but we don't, at least up to this point in the season. The trend in January so far, he's starting to play a little bit more. So I don't want to get too deep into that point. But yeah, I think he's firmly in that second team area right now. If you break it down to me, I'm looking at Jokic is, clear cut, above the pack. I mean, he's having another historically great season. And then you throw a Giannis Antetokounmpo in there, right? That's another reliable, right? He does what he does season in, season out, and he's one of the most productive players in the NBA. And then after that, you can make an argument. I mean, you got Anthony Davis.
You have SGA in there, though.
No, I'm talking about the yeah. I'm going by the because okay.
It's still
to your point,
right?
I was gonna get to your point. It is positionless, but as a voter, I'm still going to place some type of value in the positions. Now, if it's just because I think the positionless argument came more because guards just took over the NBA, and we were seeing so many guards being left out with like third team bigs being, guys that were nowhere near as good as some of the guards that were being left off. But this year, it's kind of more of a balance. I would like to think in the league with some of the bigs that we've seen, the Domantas Sabonis, Alperen Sengun type guys who are kind of on that back end. Karl Anthony Towns you mentioned, but yeah, I think Jaren Jackson Jr. has put himself firmly in that second team talk, in that conversation. He's in the talks with Anthony Davis. I think you got to look at what Karl Anthony Towns has been doing and those guys, and he's firmly in there. And the best part about Jaren to me, and this is what I always take into account when we're talking about the best of the best, is the guys who can do it on both ends. That's a separator to me. If it's tightly, if it's a tough decision and there's one guy who's a plus defender, I'm going to choose that guy 9 times out of 10. And Jaren Jackson Jr. has that ability to where he's really impacting the game and being a dominant force for the Grizzlies on both ends. And get to the point that you mentioned about the ramifications of this thing. It's something me and you've talked about a lot, right? If Jaren Jackson Jr. makes All NBA, the money situation and things like that. Keith Smith, who does some work for Spotrac, salary cap expert, one of the best in the business, wrote a story. It's been about a week or two now on Jaren Jackson Jr. You guys should definitely go check it out. And he talked about, he had a different angle, Joe. It's honestly one I haven't heard before. I don't know if you've heard it before, but he basically said the Grizzlies should be rooting for Jaren Jackson Jr. to make All NBA. And when I initially hear it, that take, I'm like, I mean, of course, you want the person to get all his coins, but on the business side, it's going to make some things difficult. You're going to have to make some real tough decisions in the future when you got to give a guy that much money. But basically his argument, which made a lot of sense. And again, you got to read the story to just get the full details, but kind of like some footnotes. His argument was that if Jaren Jackson Jr. doesn't make All NBA this season, basically, he's probably not going to sign that extension, because that extension that he'd be eligible for this offseason would be roughly 4 years, $146 million, because it would basically be an escalator from his previous contract, which, again, was a de-escalating contract and which wasn't a max contract. So this is one of the rare scenarios where not giving a guy the max can kind of come back to bite you, because in his case, he turned into a max type of player, at least where he's at least worthy of the conversation. So in the Grizzlies case, they can't give him a max. So if he were to not make All NBA, he'd be eligible for a 4-year, $146 million, somewhere in that range, type of contract. Jaren, if Jaren clearly could make more than that if he just waits one more summer, then he'd be eligible for a 5-year contract, roughly around $300 million or so, which is what he'll automatically, if he makes All NBA, he'll be eligible for that Supermax extension. And Keith pointed out the point that the Grizzlies don't have to necessarily give him the exact number. If you remember the Desmond Bane contract, we usually just call it a max. But if you want to get really into the parameters, Desmond Bane does not have a maximum contract. He's like right below it. So again, that's something we could see them do with Jaren Jackson Jr., give him a contract that's just a little bit below the max, but you're talking about 5 years, probably well over 280 million, as opposed to 4 years, 146 million. So the point of the article, and again, he has all the good details in there, and it made a lot of sense to me, Joe. Curious to what you think too, but Jaren Jackson Jr., you should probably want him to make All NBA this season. And I know people talk about the money situation, but if he doesn't make All NBA, I hadn't thought about this much, but it makes complete sense. He doesn't make All NBA, Joe. He's probably going to wait until next summer. Now you're competing with the rest of the league for his services.
you should be cheering as loud as possible for him to make all NBA, because I think you're exactly right. And it's one of the ironies of people pointing out in the comments and on social media that Desmond Bane is the highest paid player on the team, right? John Morant is an actual max contract, though, if I'm not mistaken. He actually has a max contract, but Des does not, technically. I don't think Jaren will either, right? And I think that will be the irony of the situation, not necessarily taking less, because Jaren's about to make, goodness gracious, double, if not, what his current contract is. So he's not, it's not like he's going to be lacking for funds, but I don't think he's going to take a true max. I'm with you. Same, it's going to be similar to Bane. He's still going to make a ton of money. And you want him to be eligible for that type of deal with a larger umbrella of cash now. You want it now, before there's an opening, before there's trade rumors. He's not happy in Memphis, even if it's not true, right? And you've covered Jaren for a long time. It's not true. Jaren is very happy in Memphis. Even if it wasn't that, I could see Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith now. All right, he's going to look good in New York. He's going to look good in LA. You know how it goes, right? Yeah, you know how it goes. They're going to act like they're geniuses because they watched the highlights of one Memphis Grizzlies game, right? Jaren is going to be a Grizzly for life, hopefully. And I could see them striking while the iron is hot if he makes all NBA now. I agree with Sam Vecini. I think it's going to happen. Barring injury, knock on all of the wood. I think I would replace Luka since he's not eligible anymore. I think I would replace Luka with Donovan Mitchell. It's hard to say the Cleveland Cavaliers are the best or second best team in the NBA and not have a first team guy when they're right there. I think Mitchell is an easy replacement. I think Jaren's second team alongside some of those other guys that we named earlier. So let us know on X at Damichael C, at Joe Mullinax. Hit us up in the comments. What are you thinking about Jaren? Is he all NBA as of today? Hopefully Jaren can stay healthy and finish the season strong. If he keeps playing, I said it during the Timberwolves game, if Jaren stays on the floor, they're going to win. And that's exactly what played out, right? And then that, again, that's not elite analysis. If you watch this team play, Jaren is the best player on the team this season. That's the guy that if he's on the court, they're going to have a good chance to win. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, another award that will be a hot commodity in Memphis. Two players in the mix, Jaylen Wells or Zach Edey for Rookie of the Year. Who you got at the halfway point of the campaign? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Grizzlies. Today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Gametime. I love going to live events, sports, music, theater, comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending WrestleMania 40 in Philadelphia last year, Damichael's old neck of the woods. The energy, the excitement, it was unforgettable. I had a blast. I love looking forward to that next adventure. And Gametime has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. The Super Deal is particularly impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. You can see exactly what type of cost you're paying up front with the all-in pricing option. No surprise fees at checkout. It is all great through the Gametime app. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. All right, so odds, right? We use all sorts of odds for bets and things like that. In 2025, Pete Rose is out there very frustrated wherever he's at in the ether. Man. Yeah, it's wild how just accepted sports gambling is now. And
ball game, right?
A whole different ball game. And two of the favorites to win Rookie of the Year play for the Memphis Grizzlies. We've talked about this before, right? Jaylen Wells, Zach Edey. Zach Edey was the preseason favorite. Yep. I've talked a little bit in the newsletter. I know you're looking into this yourself as well, partner for the Commercial Appeal. The Grizzlies don't really use Zach Edey the way that maybe Zach Edey should be used to maximize him.
You can get me started, man.
Yeah, it's not great. I'm acknowledging that. Feels like
one of those things.
Feels like something we can dive into deeper. If you wink, wink, nudge, nudge, have a think piece on it coming out here soon. But for the purpose of this segment, we can talk about who we got if we had to make a pick right now. And for me, it is Wells in part because of that. The Grizzlies are not using Edey in the best way for him to put his best foot forward. I don't think Edey is playing poorly. Most statistics say Edey is playing extremely well, right? I think that you have to acknowledge that stats are saying that Wells is playing well too. Yeah. And Wells is getting more opportunity. And that is the differentiating point for me right now. Wells, even when he has his cold nights, is still out there because he's getting primary defensive assignments. It is him who has made Anthony Edwards' life miserable the last two times the Grizzlies have played the Timberwolves. It's fun to watch. He gets right up into his grill, face guarding him. It's really impressive. It harkens back to prior really good defenders here in Memphis a little bit. He is able to shoot the three. We've seen that time and time again. There's obvious limitations in his game. But again, this is a second-round rookie we're talking about. So when you take all those factors into consideration, not the fault of Edey. For me, it is Wells at this juncture. Do you agree?
Yeah, it's definitely Jaylen Wells right now. And you talked about the odds. Joe, I don't get it, but whatever. The FanDuel odds have Jaylen Wells right now a third. He's behind Alex Sarr, who's number one. Stephon Castle is second, and Jaylen Wells is third. Now, it's pretty close. Sarr is plus 200, Castle's plus 220, Jaylen Wells is plus 330. But
Take the plus 330. Take it right now. Take it.
Look, I don't know what else the guy has to do. He's held Steph Curry to one of the worst nights of his career. You mentioned the tough defense he's played against. A guy like, Dame Lillard, Tyrese Maxey, Luka. Like, it's a long list, and he's been competitive in all these matchups. You just don't ask rookies to do things like that. And then those rookies aren't, for goodness sake, when the Grizzlies played Stephon Castle, you look at his count stats and he scored 20 plus points in both games. But if you just watch the game, they left them open. Like, teams aren't saying, hey, Jaylen Wells beat us from 3-point. They're not leaving Jaylen Wells open. You'll lose quickly. But in the Grizzlies case, they identified Stephon Castle as the weak link in that starting lineup. So the weak link in the Spurs team starting lineup that clearly isn't on the level of the Grizzlies based off what we've seen. The weak link in their starting lineup is essentially the rookie of the year and a player who you can make an argument that he's the fourth most valuable player on the team. I've made the argument for Santi. I know that's probably not a popular opinion after this last game that he just had, but you can make the argument for Jaylen Wells. I would not argue with you. The defense that he provides and his three-point shooting are both timely and important for the Grizzlies. And, Joe, you hit on something that's very important when we talk about with Zach Edey, because I don't want to get him lost in the conversation because he's still very relevant to the hunt. And I've talked to him a lot lately about his role. And as you mentioned, I may or may not be writing about that very soon here. But, like with Zach Edey's role, it's something that's evolving. That is something that we have said over the course of the year. You watch earlier in the season, he had games where he had, the 20-point, 12 game. You watch lately, it's a surprise to see him get to 10 points. And, he's not a focal point from a scoring standpoint. It's not get the ball in the low post to Zach Edey and let him cook. This is not the offense's priority right now. Now, the good part of that, at least from I would say urgency perspective. You still might not agree with the ideology of it, but from an urgency standpoint, the Grizzlies kind of have the mentality of we're trying to compete for the playoffs right now. We don't got the time to be working on guys developing, low post moves. We got to go with what we know because the West is very tight. This is me paraphrasing. Just again, I've had a lot of conversations about that, and that's kind of the sense that I've gotten from some of the things that I've been told. And with that being said, you're seeing his role be a little bit more simplified than the role of Jaylen Wells, whereas Jaylen Wells has a simplified role, but it's a role that's very important to the success of this team. That's why you're seeing him play more in the fourth quarters than Zach Edey as of late, and his count stats are starting to reflect that. So, yeah, right now, give me Jaylen Wells, but if the Grizzlies start to utilize Zach Edey in some different ways here going forward, we got a lot of time. Some things could change, Joe.
If you think about it, Wells is filling the Vince Williams Jr., Dillon Brooks role. Right? That is essentially what he is doing for the Grizzlies in a more efficient way than Dillon Brooks in terms of offense, at least. Edey is being asked to be Steven Adams, and Steven Adams was really important. He did really significant things for the team, rebounding, screening, all that sort of stuff. Adams was not asked to be an offensive force, right? Adams was not asked to do more than putbacks and be the roller or in the dunker spot, right? That was essentially what Adams was asked to do. And that's what Edey's being asked to do. Is Edey capable of more offensively? Probably, but that's not what is being asked right now. And as you alluded to, they're in the thick of it in the Western Conference. They're winning. They want to continue to keep winning. It's an interesting dynamic to watch as the second half of the season unfolds. Let Damichael and I know. Hit us up in the comments on X, at Damichael C, at Joe Mullinax. Is it Jaylen Wells for you? I have a feeling this is going to be a pretty slam dunk answer. Wells is having a tremendous season, but I'm with you, partner. We can't lose what Edey is doing. It doesn't mean Edey is bad. He is. The Grizzlies are, fifth or sixth in the NBA in terms of they're at the bottom of that first tier, top of the second tier, however you want to phrase it. And right now they're starting 2 rookies, right? That's a testament to the coaching staff. That's a testament to the front office that drafted these guys. And obviously it's a testament to the roster itself. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to preview tonight's game. No disrespect to the Hornets. Should be a short one, not necessarily. They're not good. There's no mercy rule or anything. But Charlotte, I have very little respect for Ball. We've already talked about that. Not Ball in general, but you'll pick up what I'm putting down when we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies. Stick around. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am Joe Mullinax, joined by my co-host, Damichael Cole of the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. He is the Memphis Grizzlies beat writer for that publication. I am a contributor to Grizzlead. I also write our daily newsletter, again, free daily newsletter covering the Memphis Grizzlies, not just the podcast. Make sure you're subscribing at lockedondaily.com. Damichael, we're going to get out of here on this. You're going to be in the house again at FedEx Forum. Memphis at home all week, if I am correct. Enjoying the chance to sleep in their own bed and play some basketball throughout the week. They have the Charlotte Hornets tonight. The good news about this season is, as much as Memphis has been iffy or wishy-washy against a tough Western Conference, they're beating the absolute crap out of the Eastern Conference. Even the decent teams, right? Not necessarily Cleveland or somebody like that, but like the tier 2 teams and below, Memphis has been known to beat up on a time or two. The Hornets are really bad. I refuse to acknowledge the Hornets being good at anything, even if that it includes the supposed elite all-star prospects of one low ball.
It ain't prospects, Joe. He'll be there. You better.
Total nonsense from the NBA fan base. All the 16-year-olds that get their news from TikTok, but that's neither here nor there. LaMelo Ball is one of the most inefficient players in the NBA. He's going to get his whatever. I don't really care if he does. Outside of Ball, the Hornets completely and totally stink. This should be a win decisively for the Grizzlies. I should be able to record my solo episode for tomorrow's show in the fourth quarter. It should be a blowout. Please tell me why I'm right.
Well, Joe clearly doesn't swerve and bend those corners when he drives.
No.
And not really a big ball guy right here. But look, he is not the most efficient player in the league. But what he does is he shoots a bunch of 3-pointers. And we've questioned the Grizzlies' 3-point defense at times. They still grade out as one of the better ones in the NBA, but they're susceptible at times. Look, I'm with you. I'm just pointing out certain, areas that will be key to emphasize over the course of this game. LaMelo's going to get a bunch of 3-pointers up. Brandon Miller's hurt right now. He's going to be out, for the foreseeable future. That is a tough loss for them. Him and LaMelo, between those two, they both were getting up, upwards of 23-pointers a game. So they don't have him. Trey Mann is also out. That's their other backcourt dynamic scorer. So a lot of the backcourt scoring is going to be on LaMelo Ball. And outside of that, the Hornets don't have, many more scoring options. Miles Bridges, he's very effective in transition, but his half court, offense is leaves something to be desired. Really good athlete and is capable of making some 3-point shots. The other guy that's really going to be the one to watch, and it's going to be a really good matchup for the Grizzlies, is Mark Williams. You remember Mark
Williams can ball. Oh yeah,
he came out of Duke, and he was kind of he was someone we talked about on the show as you remember that offseason where we were just infatuated with the Grizzlies getting another center. This is when Steven Adams was still on the roster, and we were like, the Grizzlies should draft a center in the first round. The Grizzlies should draft a center in the first round, and Mark Williams was a guy that I really liked throughout that process. And he's really he's turning into something. He's been really effective over the last last week. I would say. He's a double-double machine. He has a 9'9" standing reach. Like, I don't know if people know how tall or how long, however you want to put it, a 9'9" standing reach is. That's taller than Zach Edey's.
Well, that means he can essentially touch the rim from his standing there.
Just put his arm in there, no tippy toes. That's taller than Zach Edey's. That's taller than Victor Wembanyama's. That's taller than Rudy Gobert's. I mean, he is a force, from that perspective. So, we watch these games, and it's something to be mindful of how the Grizzlies in recent games, we've seen Ja Morant kind of take a couple mid-range jumpers against the Timberwolves, against the Spurs, because the Timberwolves had Rudy Gobert in the paint. The Spurs had Victor Wembanyama in the paint. There was some tough finishes and some tough scoring opportunities. Mark Williams kind of presents a similar challenge from the standpoint, again, 9'9" reach without even, without even standing on his tiptoes, without jumping or anything. So I'm looking forward to how the Grizzlies handle the challenge of him being, a guy who's going to try to deter some things at the rim, him being a very good rebounder. But yeah, it's him, LaMelo Ball, and just a bunch of guys trying to make a name for themselves for the most part. They got some hoopers though, but again, two of their best hoopers, Trey Mann, Brandon Miller, both out right now. Grant Williams, out for the season, UT Vol. So look, at the end of the day, I'm with you, Joe. This is one the Grizzlies should take care of business. Yugi Calmore is on a two-way transfer right now, so you won't get we won't Yuki chance, and you won't get Yugi in this one. But at the same time, it should be a lot of playing time for everybody. Gigi should get him a couple more minutes under his belt, and whoever else.
As much as I like to make fun of the Hornets, and I do enjoy making fun of the Hornets, they have won 4 of their last 5 games. They beat Phoenix recently. And now, in fairness, they beat Utah, they beat Chicago, they beat Dallas, and I do believe Kyrie was back for that game. Mm-hmm. Kyrie scored 33 points in that contest, so they knocked off the Mavs.
It's their best stretch of the season. Yep,
best stretch of the season. They're playing pretty good ball. Memphis is still an 11 or so point favorite in this contest. Mm-hmm. For me, the significance is not giving a team like that hope. And you'll hear Brevin Knight and other analysts. Yep. If it's close through the first and second quarter, they're going to think they have a shot. Yeah. And they're going to compete because coaches and players don't tank. Front offices might tank, but players and coaches don't tank, right? So they're going to compete. If you knock them down quickly and you make it clear that tonight's not their night, that's when white flags get waved in the middle of third quarters, right? And that has to be the goal of the Grizzlies, because they are in a stretch where, because they play tonight, they play Friday night, they play Saturday night, right? So this is entering a 3-game and 4-night stretch, correct?
That's right. Yeah, that's correct.
So this is a game where they can save their legs a little bit. Jaren shouldn't have to play 34 or 35 minutes in this game. If the Grizzlies play the way that they're capable of and they utilize their depth the way that they're capable of, this is a chance to save some of those minutes for the upcoming back-to-back.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely something that I was going to point out too. People talk about the minute stuff a lot. I kind of had my little segment earlier in the show talking about the minutes. This is one of those stretches right here where I'm a little okay with it. You're about to play 3 bad teams, at least by records. All these games in this upcoming stretch, where you talk about Wednesday, Friday, Saturday games, 3 games in 4 days, all at home, and of course you're playing to win Wednesday, but at the same time, we haven't seen enough stability with the starters, with a lot of the guys coming off the bench. I think Jake LaRavia is likely to miss this game, which is going to open up some playing time for Gigi Jackson. But other than that, you want to see these guys kind of continue to build that continuity. This is a very good stretch to do it. And to me, no disrespect to the Hornets, we've kind of slighted them a lot, in this show so far. But
in fairness, I've slighted them a lot. I have.
Yeah, but what I'm about to say is probably kind of bad for them. But you kind of look at this game as like one where you're getting in-game practice reps. Like, I know that's it. But it's because
I love it.
Because look, if you watch that last game, even though the starters played a chunk of the minutes, I felt like a reason for the plus-minus numbers the way they were with the bench, because it wasn't a lot of the 5-man just throwing the whole bench guys out there. It was a lot of trying to mix and match the right combinations. And Santi was struggling. And, it was give GG Jackson a chance. Scotty wasn't having a great game or anything like that. Scotty came in. I think he was like the 11th guy to come in. And then Jay Huff came in. He was like the 12th guy. Basically, they got to figure out how to get this thing to a – Taylor Jenkins said he wants to have a 10-man rotation eventually. That is what he has said. Right now you're playing – in this last game, you played 12 guys. I would say the rotation was still probably 11 because GG Jackson wasn't planned to be in the rotation. So you're playing 11 guys right now, but that's still a lot to me because Vince Williams and Marcus Smart are on the way back. So, but the point is, I think right now you have a chance to kind of solidify some things a little bit. And those other guys, you get more run in the back end of the game in the fourth quarter, hopefully if it's a blowout or whatever the case may be. But you look at this game as, hey, look, this is an NBA game. We're going to get good run. It's a game we should, if we play to our capabilities, we should win this game, and we're going to get our guys. We're going to find the combinations that mix and match the best because it's getting to that stretch where, we saw this 11-game stretch against some really tough West teams. The Grizzlies just went 6-5. That's solid if you ask me. But, Joe, I don't know if we did record predictions before that, but I'm pretty sure I had them at like 7-4 before that. So a little bit under what I expected them to do. And I think figuring out and kind of shrinking down this rotation and solidifying it a little more is going to be something that they really can kind of do in this stretch.
Go get your tickets now to watch LaMelo Ball score 33 points on 35 shots as the Memphis Grizzlies beat the Charlotte Hornets by a score of 128 to hopefully 102 or something like that. But Damichael Cole will be there as part of his gig covering the Memphis Grizzlies for the Commercial Appeal. I will have you solo on tomorrow's show talking about this game, hopefully trashing LaMelo Ball some more. And partner, I have a feeling you're going to do something similar because LaRavia is likely to be out, doubtful due to injury. Mm-hmm. I am going to, as part of my solo show for tomorrow, I'm going to really watch GG Jackson closely, assuming he plays a little bit and gets into a rhythm and breaks a sweat. I'm going to watch how he's used because he was the 4 next to Jaren at one point against Minnesota. But as you alluded to, he wasn't really in the plans. Taylor Jenkins said he wasn't going to play him, and he just kind of put him out there for looking for something. So assuming GG is actually part of the plans, I want to see how GG is used because we're getting closer and closer to trade time. And you know me, partner, I get itchy around this time of year. But with GG Jackson and Vince Williams Jr. and Marcus Smart, does the team actually need to make a trade? It's time to start gathering some data on that. And GG's obviously a big piece of that conversation.
Yeah, you got to be able to have some confidence in those guys as you get to, like you said, the trade deadline. But yeah, GG Jackson, this is a guy to really watch in this game. It's his second game. He played 11 minutes in this last game. This team, man, we just keep saying things about the Hornets. I think the Hornets are a really talented team when they're healthy. They got some young pieces over there. But with that being said, this is a team that isn't the most talented roster right now as currently constructed. So it'll be good reps for GG, and kind of getting to play with some of those other guys, right? We say he hadn't played with John Morant yet until this past game, and still there wasn't a big sample size from that. And if he wants to be on the floor, you talk about in the playoffs, you're going to be on the floor with Ja, Dez, Jaren Jackson Jr., and those guys. So good reps for GG Jackson coming up as well, not just as an individual player. I know what you're going to be watching, Joe. You're going to be watching the playmaking stuff. I wish I said it to myself when GG came in the game, the crowd's going crazy. And then they threw him the pass. And he chunked that shot up like straight off the bench. I said, "What is Joe thinking right now?" I wonder what Joe said because I'm talking about
take a good shot, find the great shot. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, good reps for GG coming up.
Yeah, looking forward to it. It's going to be a good solo show. Make sure you're with me on Thursday, and Damichael and I will be back together to close out the week on Friday. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. We're proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Again, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Make Damichael and I a part of your Memphis Grizzlies and NBA content consumption each and every time that an episode drops. Don't forget about our free daily newsletter, LockedOnDaily.com. Get free Grizzlies words from me in your inbox every day, plus NBA at large content, plus fantasy basketball advice, so much more. Go to LockedOnDaily.com. Click on the Locked On Grizzlies tab and subscribe to our free daily newsletter. For Damichael Cole, I am Joe Mullinax. Stay locked in. Enjoy Grizzlies-Hornets. We're sorry that we trashed the Hornets so much, Charlotte. We really are, but they're just not good right now. It's okay. Your day is coming. Have a good one.